Oh, welcome to Life as We Know It for Sunday, March 19th. Hopefully your bracket, well, let's be honest, everybody's bracket at this point in time is busted if you're playing along in the basketball tournament. Most people got their bracket busted on day one, but after yesterday, probably a little worse for wear. Anyway, this is not about basketball. I'm Steven, background radio, found it in college, started doing it for years, worked with some great people, did morning shows, afternoon drive shows, curated playlists, worked pretty much all the aspects of it, love it, still do it, but sometimes you need to talk a little bit more about things that aren't necessarily on every radio station. In my case, I love sports, I love things that I observe in life, and I love movies. So today, we're going to spoil Shazam! Fury of the Gods. If you haven't seen it yet, it's in theaters currently. It dropped last Thursday night into Friday, the sequel to the 2019 Shazam movie that was, I think, a pleasant surprise for most of us. Anyway, I think we all kind of really liked Shazam. But I think the thing is Warner Brothers DC has been so problematic the last couple of years that I'm not sure this thing stood a chance, no matter how good you may or may not think it is. Let's get into this for a second. So there's been a little bit of comic book movie fatigue. The Marvel Cinematic Universe kicked off in 2008, wrapped up with Endgame in 2019. They had the next chapters lined up. The pandemic hit, and then it kind of got sidetracked a little bit, and this phase hasn't been as good as the previous phase. But we're not going to talk Marvel this time. We're talking comic book movies in general. About halfway through the success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we saw DC start to jump in, starting with Man of Steel. Then it was Batman versus Superman, which, if you put Batman and Superman on screen together, two of arguably the most well-known comic book characters on the planet, should make $1 billion, right? Easily. Didn't happen. Then they moved that into Justice League, which was just a nightmare. Ben Affleck came out recently and had nothing but awful things to say after Zack Snyder left and Joss Whedon took over. And then it didn't perform quite as well, but Warner Brothers really has no one to blame but themselves. Justice League was just awful. The CGI mustache in the beginning of it, the bad storyline all the way through it, and they released it just to get bonuses and see what they could get out of it, which is a shame because you sacrificed what could have potentially been a $1 billion franchise. And I think the Snyder version was better than the one that came around. But DC has had a lot of misses, not just with the Justice League. Suicide Squad was torn up in editing and by producers, and it was awful. Could have been so much better. And then you had the Harley Quinn stuff, which was garbage. But yet it did have some pleasant surprises out of that. The first Wonder Woman was pretty good, but I would argue it's good because it's practically a carbon copy of Captain America First Avenger. They took that exact formula, put Wonder Woman there, and redid the whole thing, and yeah, it was pretty good because you'd seen it before and it worked the first time. Aquaman was a very pleasant surprise because I don't think many people really dug Jason Momoa when he showed up in Justice League, but a lot of people dug the first outing as Aquaman. In fact, it was the DC movie that did make $1 billion, so they definitely did something right there. And then the other surprise, pleasant surprise, was the first Shazam, and I went into that with very low expectations. For those who don't know, Shazam used to be called Captain Marvel back in the day, and then there's a little bit of a legality thing between Marvel and DC since Marvel has their version of Captain Marvel, so Shazam just basically became Shazam. And the premise of the movie is the same. A kid gets the powers of a wizard and turns into a superhero. And what I hoped out of the first Shazam was that it would be big with superpowers. And that's exactly what it was. It had a little bit of heart to it. The villain was serviceable, and Zachary Levi was really good. Not to mention, so were the child actors that played all the kids. They, too, were very good. But there was a misstep, a slight one. At the end of that movie, you had a cameo, which was a stunt double wearing the Henry Cavill Superman suit, but you never see his face, which started to get people talking. And then you had failure after failure after failure, and now what's going on with DC? Well, You had The Flash that was supposed to be out 2 years ago. It's supposedly really good, but it's seen its fair share of reshoots. Most of that cast, you don't know who's coming, who's going. They dropped some things that worked pretty well on HBO Max, like Peacemaker, but then they had some garbage that got dropped too, like the Harley Quinn movie. The sequel to Wonder Woman was awful, and that's not even, well, we kind of have to go to Black Adam because he's pivotal to Shazam, but you had The Rock's version of Black Adam, which, being honest, did not live up to expectations. But let's start with Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and we pick up a couple of years after the first one leaves, where all the orphans are now fighting crime. They're not much of a team, but they're kids with superpowers, so you kind of look past some of that. There is definitely some silliness involved with this, and the villains of this come right out of the gate. They are the Daughters of Atlas. Atlas is one of the powers that some of these kids have been bestowed upon them, and they want their father's powers back. At first, you see Lucy Liu and you see Helen Mirren, who I thought were really good in this movie, very much so, as far as villains go. I mean, a little bit wooden here and there. I thought Helen Mirren was fantastic, and Lucy Liu was fun. I mean, they had their purpose. They were serviceable villains, and I'm one who believes that, you know, since Heath Ledger's role as the Joker in The Dark Knight, there hasn't been a tremendously good villain. I just take that back because Thanos was pretty good too, but for the most part, the villains in all these comic book movies seem to lack. But this time around, they're not bad. So you have Billy, who's worried about the fact that he's going to turn 18 in a couple of weeks, couple of months, and he's afraid he's going to age out of the orphan system and not have a home, not have a family again. There's still a lot of these movies are based around the themes of family, and that's good because that's probably what works the best for it. But this is good. I like the fact that they address this because all these kids are getting older, and honestly, that was the problem you had when casting these kids. Sooner or later, they were going to age out of the child roles and get a little older. Someone told me that in the comic book, Billy Batson actually is a man and still turns into Captain Marvel, and that still works. He still has the power. I don't know, because Shazam was not a character that I followed very closely for the most part. But basically, Billy's trying to get the team to work a little better as a team and kind of figure out where he's going to go with his family. You have each of the team that's doing their own thing. Mary Marvel wants to go to college, but she kind of deferred her enrollment so that she could be part of the superhero team. So there's that struggle. And then you've got the financial struggles that the family has, trying to feed 6 orphans. And all of that I liked because that was kind of real world stuff that everybody, you know, kind of goes through on the family side of things. And at the same time, you've got 2 demigods who want their powers back. So I thought this was fun, and the fact that they did this on about $100 million budget was pretty impressive as well, because the effects hold up. They aren't bad. But all the time these kids are trying to play superheroes, you have a city that's going, you guys are doing more harm than good. You know, we're not really fans of yours. Now enter the Daughters of Atlas, who start laying waste to certain things in the city, and you've got some calamity, and you've got the guys being blamed, and all in all, you have a lot of problems. Starting with the fact that the Daughters of Atlas have the power to take the kids' powers that they have been bestowed upon, and when that starts happening, it's up to Billy to figure out a way to beat all the daughters and, you know, save his family, save the world, that kind of thing. There are some things that they introduced that's kind of cool. You see they go back to the lair where they had in the first one, which was essentially the Rock of Eternity, but they have it decorated like you would see typical teenagers do. They have all kinds of, like, you know, if you look at a 15-year-old's bedroom, that's what their crime-fighting lair would look like. But they go back to the part of the lair which was the dimensional doors where they can kind of walk through and show up in different worlds or whatever, and they're trying to map out what those are, and there's some fun with those. What I did like is each of the kids get a chance to shine a little bit and showcase a little bit more of their abilities, both on the superhero side and on the kids side, and it was fun. You gave everybody kind of a bigger role a little bit, and for as big as the movie it is, it does still feel kind of small, which is what I liked a lot about the first one. The also thing, I thought the CG held up pretty well. It does kind of make you wonder how they keep their secret identities when they're in the middle of public and being called by their real names, and you see their real parents and everything there, which every superhero movie makes that mistake. So I kind of have gotten so used to it, I just let it go, because I'm like, oh wow, cool, you just showed the entire city, the family in front of the entire city, so now everybody knows who these kids are. But needless to say, I'm nitpicking at that point. I did like Helen Mirren. I did like Damon Hanju as the wizard. He gets a little bit of a better role this time around. And I did also appreciate where they went with the story. I thought it was good enough. They kind of went back to the last movie and showed why the staff was more significant. They even reshot the last scene with the updated costumes, which I thought was kind of cool as well. And there's some pretty fun cameos. They find some things that are right out of the comic books. There's a lot of like comic book Easter eggs and things like that. They make a lot of references to a bigger DC universe. Like there's Batman and Robin references, there's Superman references, and they also kind of do some things that aren't necessarily in the comic. It also has kind of a Harry Potter-ish vibe to it. There's a pen that writes and dictates, which is kind of funny when he writes letters, including one to Wonder Woman. There's a Wonder Woman cameo that wasn't totally Wonder Woman that worked pretty well, that I thought was pretty funny. And then, of course, by now you know that Wonder Woman does cameo in this movie. So, for the most part, I liked Shazam a lot. I think what happens with this is the problem if this doesn't do well, and it's not predicted to have a very strong box office, at least at the time that I'm recording this, which is a shame. Because it is a lot of fun. It is a movie you can take the entire family to for the most part and just forget about life and enjoy it for 2 hours. But I think what Warner Brothers has done is a couple of missteps with Shazam. Part of it is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's fault because he didn't want Black Adam to have anything to do with Shazam, which is galactically stupid because Black Adam is Shazam's mortal enemy. So that's kind of like going, you know what? We want a Joker film to have absolutely nothing to do with Batman, or a Lex Luthor movie that has nothing to do with Superman. Just saying that sounds ridiculously stupid, right? Even the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix did have the Batman references in it, whether it was Batman's dad, Thomas Wayne, Wayne Manor is referenced, Arkham is referenced. All the things that are Batman-esque are referenced. So Dwayne Johnson wanted to do a Black Adam movie that had absolutely nothing to do with Shazam, other than saying the word Shazam to get his powers, and he let ego get the best of him and wanted Black Adam to fight Superman so badly, which admittedly would be cool to see, but you create a movie that was very serviceable but forgettable at the same time. It just wasn't that good. And of all the roles Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has played, I don't know that I like him as a superhero or supervillain for that matter. But nonetheless, so that doesn't work out. And now you don't have... Apparently, Black Adam was supposed to cameo at the end... The Rock as Black Adam was supposed to cameo at the end of Shazam. The first one set up something. Rock said no. Same thing in this one. They offered The Rock a cameo for this. He said absolutely not. No, don't want to be Black Adam and Shazam. So that gets lost again. So now you've got kind of a movie that we're not sure where it's going. In the end, the Wonder Woman cameo was funny, but you have all these rumors that DC is cleaning house when it comes to the Justice League, and I think they're not saying that Jason Momoa is done as Aquaman, but after the next movie, which is supposedly getting awful test screening reviews, most likely Jason Momoa is done as Aquaman. But if you have Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman hanging out in this movie, is she done? Is she not done? So you're not really sure what's happening there. Supposedly in this movie there's a part where the Daughters of Atlas cover the city with a dome, and Superman's supposed to show up there and try to get through the dome and can't do it. Therefore, and I thought it would have been a cool cameo because it's Shazam's movie and you don't necessarily want Superman flying in to save the day. You kind of want him to be the one to triumph in the end. And I thought that would have worked well, but because of all the Henry Cavill stuff with The Rock, that gets cut, so there's no Superman cameo in it. Not that you needed it, but it would have been pretty cool to have. And at the end of the movie, he ends up getting met by the chick from Suicide Squad to invite him to join the Justice, and of course he says League, no, Society, and that's supposed to reference the group that showed up in Black Adam, but it was originally supposed to be like some combination of Hawkman and whoever else was in that team showing up to invite Shazam to join, but that got changed because now you don't know if that's going to happen again because Black Adam performed so poorly. So what you're left with is a movie that will probably be closed out after this, and there won't be another Shazam, which is a shame, because I think Warner Brothers torpedoed itself by having James Gunn come out and say, we're rebooting everything, because now you had these movies that were already essentially in the works that are basically in limbo. And not that everything has to connect, but I think everybody kind of wants all these comic book movies to interconnect in some way, whether it's with another character or another series or whatnot, some kind of connection. And we're a little spoiled in that aspect. And granted, Shazam is part of the wider DC world, so it would be cool to see them connect. But because Warner Brothers can't get their crap together, this movie's one I think that's going to be, unfortunately, the victim to some of that. And it's a shame, because I think it deserves a better chance. I said when Black Adam came out, if you really want to close this out and do a Shazam 3, get Cavill back and convince The Rock to put all three of them in the same movie and end it there. And it would be kind of cool, but I don't know that they're going to do that. I don't get paid that kind of money to make those kind of decisions, but for the most part, overall, there was a lot about this movie that I really did like. Zachary Levi is a lot of fun to watch. I think it's cast well, but I think that's the one tragedy of what happens with Warner Brothers and DC Comics. I think they have casted extremely well for all of these characters. Cavill was a great Superman with just poor scripts and poor writing to really be able to do with it. Ben Affleck is my favorite Batman, right there with Michael Keaton. He looks, I've said it a million times, he looks like the character right off the page. I like Zachary Levi as Shazam, and there was a lot that you could possibly do and continue with, but now all that's in limbo. So I think by saying this is in limbo, comic book fans go, I can wait for this on video because it's not going to go anywhere else, so I don't need to rush out to theaters to see it, despite the fact that it's one of those movies you should see on a big screen. And the average audience might go, the first one was okay, but I don't know if I want it. So it's in a tough place, and it's unfortunately deserves a little bit better. So we'll see what happens, but go see it. I think there's a lot of fun with it. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. It's probably not going to make a ridiculous amount of money, but it's budgeted right that if it makes another 150 million, 200 million when it's all said and done, it'll be okay. And if they give us a third one, cool. If not, then maybe Shazam shows up in other places down the road. But nonetheless, the Fury of the Gods, not as good as the first one, but certainly a serviceable sequel and definitely worth your time to see. So that's what I got. Thank you for listening to my comic book rant about Shazam and other things. Check me out on the socials. I am at Stephen Lewis on the air. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have yourself a fantastic day wherever you are, and go spend time with people you love, like, or tolerate, because time is limited. So get out of here.